We're live and direct with Tom Hibbert. Is it still Winning Health Solutions? That's what it was when I first went. I know you've changed your personal branding.
Yeah, so we opened Winning Health in 2009, and now it's Winning Strength as of the end of the last lockdown. So the pandemic brought the change on. Winning Strength. Just it screams more about me, my ethos, what I'm about with regards to sport and athleticism, the way I train people. It just fits me more. Winning Health Solutions we came up with, or I think it was me mainly, because we wanted to get everything. You don't really know where you're going to go, and I think I've been nudged down that strength pathway, as you probably know as well.
Yeah, and you're always going to be about holistic health, but the majority of people who come to you, they're going to want to get crazy strong. So Winning Strength is like literally the promise. And that's what, I think that's a great message straight up for anyone out there who's a gym owner, business owner. If your brand can have the promise in it, then, that's going to communicate to the people you want to work with better. And the brand that you personally love, that you think resonates with you, often people have these holistic brands and it's like super romantic, but it doesn't actually say anything to the people who you want to come and pay you, who you get to then take on that holistic journey. So therefore you miss out on half the people that you would have taken on this wonderful, whimsical journey. But if they can't resonate with it or see it, then So you've become you've been a business owner for a long time. Mm-hmm. You're also coming at it from the angle of being like a real strength athlete. So you've come at it from the angle of being an athlete, and you're running a business and you have to make the business work. Do you have a real passion for the business as well, or is it like a necessary evil for you?
You know what? It used to be a necessary evil. It's changed recently. It's changed as I'm reaching the end of, I call it the end of my strength career, because I've achieved things that I'm really proud of. I've got one more I definitely want to do. Nothing else that interests me as an athlete. I will still train because I find that's my best way of learning. Sometimes I get an idea 100%. Or a concept. I try it out on myself. I don't just guinea pig my athletes. You just get ideas. You get a feel for things more when you train. So you know what? It's a good question. It wasn't necessary even before. You fall in love with the idea and then you don't understand, oh crap, this is a lot more work than I thought. And my passion was obviously the strength training. And then I just made my peace with it. I'm like, right, I'm going to do well. I'm going to do enough to eat. I'm going to do enough to save. But I'm going to prioritize my strength training ability. I'd never thought of myself as a gifted athlete. I was one of those genetic freaks, so I'm getting hot. So I just wanted to work hard and figure out different ways of training, and I was just obsessed with that. I wasn't obsessed with business. I hate marketing. I hire somebody else to do it. She, bless her, has to have a lot of patience with me because I just don't enjoy it. I'm more about learning. I love educating and putting stuff out. And I think one of the things she's helped me realize is the way people see things is obviously different to me. I can read a couple of paragraphs, boom, that's all I need. I could listen to, when we had Charles speaking, you could listen to him, you absorb it, you do it, you crack on. I don't need it to be pretty. I don't need it to look a certain way on Instagram or whatever. Maybe that's just my nature. But yeah, that's kind of where I am now. It's flip-flopped. I'm now more about the business.
I think that's a huge thing. Like so many coaches start because they're passionate about it, because they love the athlete side, and then it's an amazing idea to have a gym, and you want to have a place where people can get genuine service results. You're going to be full time in the gym, like that's the dream. But if you can't make it work financially, then it just becomes a nightmare, and you don't get to help as many people. You're stressing about all sorts of things that you didn't want to be stressing about. You can't put as much time into your own training. You can't, you don't have the energy for that, or you don't get as much learning done as you want to get done. So the business, making that business side work is such a key piece for the freedom and space that you want to have. The reason why you start. Now you're transitioning more, like we're just touching before we started the recording, like you're about to release an app. What's the idea behind that, and how's that process been?
So the process has been fun because right. So the way the process started was one of my clients was fed up of the Excel sheet on his phone. Okay. So we've all got Excel sheets. I've been selling them for donkeys of years. I'm quite proud of what we managed with an Excel sheet, and he helped me with some of the Excel sheets. But he's like, look, I go in the gym and you have to scroll from like one side to the other, and the input's not great. So he's like, right, I'm just going to create an app for myself. And I was like, do you want to monetize that? Then he was like, yeah, we can try, we can give it a go. And the app has gone from obviously just taking my spreadsheets and how they're written, what content's in them, all the programs, all the reps and sets, and it's taken that, looked at what other competitors do. Like there aren't many apps that give you the opportunity to write tempo. There aren't many apps that give the opportunity to write your own complete database with videos. There aren't many apps that also have the marketplace option. So we're just taking the best of every world. But the main thing is I wanted it for me and my clients and my strength athletes. So it's so customizable as a coach. So if you went on there, you can basically make it your own thing. You can completely ignore my database, my videos, and you can make your own one up. And that's kind of what we wanted. And now people can enter in their workouts. I can actually see clients doing it in real time if I wanted. I could log onto their calendar and go, oh, he's doing that right now. And they're entering all their data in. I can comment on it. They can upload their videos. I can look at the set, look at the video, give them a comment. Bosh, basically take them through it. It's just taking the online process and just taking it up a level for myself as a coach. That was obviously the priority, but then we looked at it, and obviously it's a good model to roll out to other people. I think it's got a lot of legs for other people.
Yeah, that's super exciting. What's it called?
Winning Strength Blueprint.
Perfect.
So the website's up. It's just not. It's like hidden or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. When are you looking to publish, go to market?
Yeah, I keep pushing. The programmer is really happy with me. So it's ready now. But the marketplace bit just needs a week of work and then a week of testing. So the marketplace would be, let's say you had the Real Movement overhead press or Real Movement bench press, you would go on that and you could put your programs on there and set it to the mass market. So it'll be free for general users, and then coaches, it would be based on how many clients they've got if they wanted to use it. But the opportunity to sell programs on there is the thing. We need to finalize that before we launch. And then there's a whole host of different things we want to run out. And that's the beauty of it, because it's a programmer and he's a business partner. It doesn't necessarily cost a whole host of money to add in new things and new functions. So we can just basically take it. It's our baby. Run with it, and then obviously as we get more clients over the next year, it'll be taking feedback and seeing what changes and functions they want.
Yeah, that's cool. Does your partner in it work full time in app development, or is it a hobby of his?
No. He's a full-time programmer.
Yeah, that's cool, because it can be super expensive to make customizations, and it's difficult to know in advance exactly how things are going to work. So I think that's a good deal. There's the same sort of deal with Real Movement. It's one of the guys that he was a member of Real Movement 2016, and then he built an app for the gym that he worked at. Now he sort of came back to us and said, hey, I'm building a new thing. Do you guys want to be the first using it? So we've got like 500 coaches on our new app, and there's been some teething and whatnot, but it's fun to see it roll out, and I think there's going to be so much innovation in this space. And I think like when AI kind of meets a bit more with programming as well, like I think there's going to be some really cool functionality come out of, what people's RPEs are and how many reps they actually get versus the target in terms of their next session, and all that sort of stuff. I think I think it'll progress in the time ahead. Like it's quite exciting. And I think, as you say, like there's definitely going to be some changes in the market, whether the existing market leaders, evolve with that, or whether there's sort of new people have a go. But I think it's going to be fun to watch. And really, ultimately,
I had my videographer try a load of them, and he came to the conclusion he just did the free trial on all of them, and he wanted to write a program for his partner, and he came to the conclusion he's better off on Evernote. Just because the lack of options and functions to create your own workout based on what you see, instead of, I think a lot of these look pretty, where ours is, it looks good, but it's basic, it's functional. Yeah,
love it. What else have you been sort of working on innovating around, like more in the training realm? I know you're always learning, looking for the edge. Have you been running any experiments that you can let us in on lately?
I suppose the latest one was I've been running strength, maximal strength, and speed strength on the same day. So it's kind of like taking some theory of how the Bulgarians used to train, where they would train 30 to 40 minutes at a time and then take a 30-minute break. Now they're going to do this multiple times a day. We're talking they might do it twice and then twice again in the afternoon and twice again in the evening. I'm just doing it twice in the morning. And I wanted to see how Andy Bolton trained and how I reacted to it. Only on 2 days a week though. So the way Andy Bolton trains is he always does his maximal strength and then he always does his speed work straight afterwards. He doesn't use accommodating resistance. So let's take the deadlift. That's what he's known for. He'd work up to his target set of 5 for that week. He'd do a nice linear progression over 4, 8, 12 weeks, whatever. So he works up to set of 5, backs off, takes a huge percentage off, and does loads of speed work with the bar, no accommodating resistance. So he always goes maximal strength and speed work because he's potentiated for that speed work. His speed work is now quicker. And that's what he finds is the key to his strength gains. So I wanted to try that. And then I wanted to intersperse it with little rest periods. It's something I've done before at my peak at under 90, probably when I was the strongest I was at that weight. I was doing 4 mini sessions a day, 4 days a week. So I would train at 7, 8, 9, 10. Half an hour on, half an hour off. So I'm kind of doing that, but it's only 2 sessions. So I'm used to a lot more volume, so I can handle it. But I've been doing it with some other guys as well who are able to get access to that equipment. So it's a weird concept because it sounds like, oh my God, you're doing so much work. But it's just spreading it out so you can get maybe 5 to 10% more work. And then again, a little bit more quality. So that's the only recent experiment I've been doing. It's you would do your maximal session. You've got 30 to 45 minutes up from the first set to get that done, 30-minute break, and then you're doing your speed strength session, which usually takes less than 30 minutes. I much prefer getting workouts done like that at the moment rather than one massive workout.
Another thing that might come with that as well is like in terms of tendons, and there's a few things that come up for me there, but the speed strength work and accommodating resistance, like the risk for some people is if you don't get the tendons warmed up like that, you can flare tendons, with the accommodating resistance, the banded speed work. If you're doing it after you've already worked to heavy work and you sort of warmer going into the session, potentially, mitigate some of that challenge. You're maximally neurally potentiated. I guess the purist would say if you give, you don't choose what you're going to adapt to then. If you're like giving too many different types of, if you're trying to put a pattern into the record, if you're trying to etch something neurologically into your brain, a pattern, and you do it in different ways, then you don't like create a specific stimulus from that session.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about doing only ever one strength quality per session, which is also what Louis says.
Well, a lot of people say, I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but that's like something that, a lot of people push of like, if you have multiple patterns in there, then you may not actually learn as much. To me, it doesn't make sense. It's like if you played piano and just because you play 2 different pieces or 3 different pieces in the same piano practice, it doesn't mean you're not going to learn the first one because you play a different one with a different style after that. If you take it to Bulgarian, if you take it to weightlifting, some of the best squatters in history and strongmen with the best deadlifts in history, they're more so playing a number of different styles or a number of different musical instruments and then coming up with performances and probably levels of resilience, that other athletes can't match. The durability of a strongman versus the durability of a powerlifter. You're going to see a lot of difference based on that kind of movement vocabulary or variety of stimulus.
Yeah, I see that point, and I still run training with different systems. And for me, it's the key. Yeah. The key is changing the system. But if that was the case, Andy Bolton wouldn't have done anything, and neither would any of his athletes. And he's had a lot of guys just in the same gym, pull, not world record numbers, but very good numbers. And then he obviously trains a lot of people online that pull and push good numbers. So for me, I don't get stuck into one system. I like to try different things. I see the point, but I would agree to disagree. For me, that system is better for speed strength if you want to improve that quality. not necessarily maximal strength is what I'm finding.
Yeah. And you're getting your volume done with the potentially a more powerful neurological, stimulus by doing the speed work rather than getting volume in the way Shako might with lots of kind of sub-maximal, lots of sets. You're getting a bunch of practice, but you're not getting that maximal neural drive, neither of the heavy set, which comes first, nor of the sub-maximal volume. Like, I guess that's what Westside and what you're talking about there with Andy, like you're getting a maximal, like a stronger learning stimulus potentially, if you have a given amount of training volume that you can get done, do you get more learning when there's maximal intention versus a weight that doesn't really require that, which is kind of the way a lot of powerlifting stuff is programmed.
For sure.
Does he do that on the pressing as well?
Andy?
Yeah. Are you doing that on your pressing?
Yeah. So I do a press day and a squat day because I don't need to do too much on the posterior chain. The clean's not a problem. How does he do his benching? Yeah, very similar. He does it on 3 days a week. And that's one of the reasons I think he's better, because he goes heavy 3 days a week. I think people go too heavy too often. So he'll go, squat day, bench day, deadlift day, take 4 days off. Sometimes he'll do remedial work on a fourth day, basically grip and things like that.
So he doesn't subscribe at all to the little sub-maximal recovery type workouts of Westside, which become a lot more than that, I guess, in some of the Westside. No.
If you ask Andy's opinion on Westside, he's not derogatory about it, but he's like, look, that does not work for me. I'm not interested in it. And he's been using the same system for years, but he doesn't do lots of mini workouts, not at all.
Yeah. It's funny how I always look for the common ground as well, though, right? Like, look for the commonality. What if there's multiple people training world champions and they might argue about things, but if you can see, well, these are the points of similarity, like this is what crosses over, I think that's
the biggest similarity is the fact that they both do speed work.
Yeah. And if they're valuing that highly, I guess it's also like he's only, Louis Simmons' system, it's only going heavy on the presses once a week. It's only going heavy on the squats once a week, so there is that commonality potentially with it as well. What's your take on the Westside? Have you ever tried that style with the mini workouts?
With the mini, no. The only thing I don't like about Westside is the way he does his max effort session. I'm not a big fan of the different lift each week. I know you see different things. You never know what's truly going on. But the premise of it would be building up to a max for that lift in as quickish as time as possible. After a certain point, once you think you're ready after 60-70%, it's get there in decent jumps. It's not like do a lot of attempts at it. Not at all. I prefer a little bit more planning. I love the Norwegian loading system that I've got on the website. It's a multi-frequency squat system and powerlifting system, but just the loading is just so. It's the one I used with Hicksy. I used it with Hicksy, and I took his. It was the final block that took his strip log from 200 to 215, only 15 kilos off the world record. So it works. Even it doesn't matter what kind of level athlete you are. It's about being patient with it. But I like that, and then obviously I love the undulating side of things. Obviously, I first learned from Charles. I love that way of doing that into a peak rather than just. Honestly, I've never tried Louis' system, the max effort system. I massively love it when I've got 2 maximal days, 2 speed strength days for similar lifts, overhead press, push press, whatever. And I use that. I've used that with great results myself and my athletes. I use it quite a lot with my strongmen, and lots with powerlifters. But it's just the maximal effort. I'm not comfortable with almost guessing at lifts. It seems. There must be a system and a way it undulates into a peak, but not a fan of it.
You could see how, though, for geared powerlifters with 20 plus years experience, in a super testosterone driven environment, they're basically practicing like competing once a week. So when they go to a competition, they're like mentally, they're going to be rock solid because of that. If they survive in the Westside gym, they're going to be rock solid. And then, a lot of those variations are kind of lockout movements, which is what the geared lifting, and they can't tolerate the geared lifting all the time, like the suits and whatnot in their training. Like they don't want to be training like their competition lifts all the time from, so it sort of makes sense from that perspective of what they've arrived to with having to do crazy heavy partials, like that being their system pretty often. Like it makes sense that they don't do lots of reps and lots of volume in those styles of lifts, but they're still getting like that top end specificity. What I think crosses over with Charles though is like, to me, like all the mini lift, the mini workouts and the overall philosophy of like you develop the movements with the speed work and then with the wherever the gaps are. To me, that sort of looks like the structural balance type model. Like you find where the gap is in your strength and hammer the crap out of that. And then when you go back and do your compound lift, it'll move where it wouldn't move before. Like, is that still where, like, how does structural balance kind of fit in, like the smaller movements, arm training, calves, the stuff that people hate about about Charles's sort of system? Where does that sort of stuff fit in for you?
What's the hate about the system? What's their belief on it?
Well, I think a lot of people are very critical of Charles for his emphasis on the arms, on the different postures and positions, and brachialis and brachioradialis, and I think that a lot of people think that Charles's system is overly complex and puts too much emphasis on single joint movements where you just need to practice the big lifts versus doing your hamstring curls and things like that. Hamstring curls are a waste of time. That kind of mentality that the other side of strength training, I think,
No, I still include structural balance theory, and you'll see it in all my. I could give you the login to all my programs, and you would see it. There's paired movements. Do you need a lot of leg curl strength? Maybe, maybe not. I've never had a hamstring issue. I've never had a knee issue. You've got reciprocal inhibition as a neurological mechanism that's going to help you with regards to range and strength and joint integrity. I do get the idea that I understand why people might say certain things are complex. I don't see it's too complex, pairing movements, but structural balance between joints. I think when people come to me with injuries, it's quite easy to find why, or not even injuries, like niggles and complaints, when you look at the certain strength of muscle groups. So I get the whole idea you need to train things as a whole, but my theory, and it's always worked, is what's the weakest link?
Yeah.
You're only as strong as your weakest link. That sticks with me. That's whether it's muscle groups, like a weak link within a muscle group. Even, again, Louis says that, whether it's Charles, it's Louis as well. But also strength qualities. You can see it when people lift, if they're constantly just slowly deadlifting off the floor. I talk about the amount of, the same thing what Louis says, the amount of gears they've got, or the gears they have access to. And I see it with people, and they lack first and second gear. They lack explosive strength. They lack speed strength. I had it with a female. Every time she deadlifted, it looked like she went from, it looks like a car taking off in third gear. So it's not easy, but you can do it. And it takes ages and ages and ages to get to speed. And that's what it looked like. And when she gets to a top end strength, she goes from, 100 goes quite quickly, 110, not even moving it. Looks like it's glued to the floor. So we did plyometrics with her. Obviously, we started with box jumps from a bench, so she's not doing it. It's more ballistic and explosive. So it's giving her the ability to get first gear activated. And then we did some speed strength work, some deadlifts against chains, bands, whatever. And her 1RM went up without doing the main lift. So she lacked a specific strength quality. So the whole you're only as strong as your weakest link, that underpins the whole system. And I can do it time and time and time again. I've got people like Hicksy, who is internationally renowned for the log and other things, and strongman. And then I've got completely different animals that I use the same exact methods and systems with. So it's not like I'm just getting a lot of freaks in and making them stronger, which can be relatively easy, if I'm honest.
Yeah. And it's not like the Bulgarian system or even potentially the West Side system where the strongest will survive. Like you're literally trying to help every person that comes in maximize. You're not going to just say, oh, you just can't handle it. Like I hear this line from even bodybuilding coaches will say, there's some prominent guys who say like, oh, their tendons just aren't able to deal with the amount of volume that's required for them to be a bodybuilder. So it's just not for them, because when they get to the volume that they need for growth, then their tendons blow up. But what they don't have in their toolkit is an understanding of the force curves and the strength curves and joint by joint balance. And oftentimes some of those guys have been very vocal speaking out against Charles's stuff. And then they're saying things like that as well. And it's like, well, maybe there's a knowledge gap here. What are your thoughts about, because to me, like I had a bit of an epiphany. I had a massive epiphany looking at Wolfgang Unzolt's, some of his posts on Instagram, and then starting to work with Ben Patrick, right? So I've been really vocal about saying, I think Ben Patrick has solved something that no one else has expressed in the same way or with clarity about knee issues, especially for runners and sprinters, jumpers. And I sort of was looking at Wolfgang's work at the time, looking at Ben's work and trying to deal with some of my own challenges. And I've arrived to a complete different understanding of strength training after like 20 years, in the gym and reading lots and lots of different books and, having done a bunch of courses. And then I was finally like, oh, that's what they were doing. Like, that's what Charles was doing. That's what Wolfgang does. It's different. And the thing for me was that you have to look at the structural component of the exercise as well as the neurological component of the exercise and understand, is there a strong tendon connective tissue contribution to this movement, or is it pretty much just a neural movement where the connective tissue is not getting challenged unless it's an extreme load relative to the other movements? Do you do you think about things in those terms?
I think so, based on what you've explained to me. I'm a big fan of Ben's stuff. I don't massively scroll on his. I don't follow Wolfgang's stuff at the moment.
Yeah. You're disciplined and focused on your own mission, which is great.
I just find that I think social media can be great for things, but I'm not.
But you can't be on everyone's stuff. No. I've got a few guys. There's a few guys that
you've got a select few that you look at, and I see some stuff and. Some of the stuff I do look at and stop at the moment, I'm a bit like, I'm not going to drop names. I'm not interested in outing people, but I think coaches need to look at results. And one of the reasons I like Ben Patrick is it's results. And I've seen him comment and they're like, oh, can you fix this? I'm like, well, I've had success with it. So he doesn't bullshit people, but he provides results. And I see other people and they're not providing the results that I see that they're throwing out on social media. Because if their system was that fucking good, then they're not. I don't see any of their coaches producing shit.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think coaches need to do is just ask, what have you produced? What are your coaches producing? What are you doing with your athletes? There needs to be a quantifiable, I took them from here to here. A lot of it I saw another one recently. I think he's got like a couple of 100,000 followers. And what I look at it and I'm like, that's a lot of fluff training. That's what Charles would refer to as enter training. It is entertaining work. I want to know what you've done with that athlete. Have you made them quicker? Have you made them more injury resilient? Have their yards improved? What is it? But I don't see enough of this, and I don't see enough of it being asked either.
Yeah. I think it's always good to look at so what is the end game of this person as well? Because I've seen a couple of posts from Wolfgang. I know you're friends with him as well. And I got massive respect for Wolfgang. He's presented for Real Movement. I think he's, top 5 coaches in the world as far as I'm concerned, knowledgeable guy, done so much for teaching others. He's done 2 posts in recently saying the split squat is a potentiation exercise. It's the most misunderstood exercise in strength training, etc. Where Ben often says this is my number 1 exercise. This is the one that's made the most difference for me. I think you have to look at what the objectives are of these coaches, what they've dealt with, and where they're going with things. If you look at maximum jumping ability, it isn't necessarily, a big part of it is being able to keep your knees healthy so you can keep going back and practicing your dunks, as well as getting stronger in the specific range. And then, a lot of the jump training systems is all about training that specific range for increases in jumps. But if you can't stay healthy, then you can't keep going out and jumping hard. So that is the massive kind of difference and dichotomy where Ben had multiple knee surgeries. Like he's got artificial stuff in his knees. He couldn't touch the backboard. I don't think he couldn't touch the ring. Now he's throwing down windmill dunks. Like what made the difference to him was getting healthy. So you got to look at it of like what was the objective of this person. The other thing with the split squat, because I saw you also post around this. I think the thing that like a lot of people in the strength world, like that love the barbell, might be not looking at is the role of the hip flexor in the back leg, right? Yeah. So it's a huge stretch. Like the way Ben is, like the ATG split squat is the Poliquin split squat taken to another level in terms of the back hip flexor. Yeah. If hip flexors are the most chronically tight muscle that is causing inhibition, causing issues for the hamstring, limiting top speed, limiting stride length, then you have to consider the role that is playing also in the knee pathology. And that I think is why it's much bigger bang for buck. I moved on from it quite quickly. Like I got strength trained. I got POCP 1 and 2 in your gym, Tom, and with Derek Woodsky and Mary Pierre.
She had a good split squat.
Well, yeah. But that was when Andre was there, Rasmus. It was a great crew. I've kept in touch with a lot of the guys. Christian Kern has done well with his gym. Marcel. Like, it was amazing how many people actually have done great stuff on the back of that. But I remember going through the split squat, and it was kind of like, well, this is what you need to do until you can squat. And I was like, well, I can already squat, so, I don't even really need to look at this. I think that was the biggest failing. And even the Patricks and the Petersons, he didn't have the Patrick step up. He had the Peterson step up and the Poliquin step up. It was kind of glazed over. And then I battled knee tendonitis for the next, bunch of years, where I actually had these tools introduced to me, but I didn't understand them. And I think because Derek already had a 40-inch vertical jump when he started working with Charles, and he'd been through all sorts of knee troubles, like he had a different perspective on it. And I missed like a bunch of gold from that. But the difference of the Patrick split squat is I think a lot of the magic is in the emphasis on the range, and then the value that can have for the fluidity of the hips. If you look at Usain Bolt and how fluid his hips are, where that's not really a priority for a strongman, right? Like, so you've got to look at who's doing what for why.
It's funny you say that about the strongman, because I've got a client. I've got many clients that do this, and they don't squat. I'm looking for knee to go hamstring on calf. Okay. Yeah. And these guys, they're like, my depth is good. I'm like, yes, your depth is good, but we're not using the squat for powerlifting. I want to use the squat as an assistance movement for all of your other movements, but also to keep knees healthy. So long story short, had it with this guy. I'm like, right, you're always going to squat halfway or just below. I'm going to put split squats at the end of your program, so I can at least stimulate the knee joint and the hip flexor in that range at the end of it. But it's just, people always do it. People always go back to bad habits because they think they're just hitting depth. But I'm using it for a different reason, and no matter how many times I explain it to them, they don't get it.
So what would be specifically, because I think this is a massive point, like what gains specifically do you think people are going to get if they do have the ability to really get to that very rock bottom position, leave a stain on the floor, Charles used to always say? Like, why is that valuable to you?
For me, it's just knee health. But he's going down.
What's he going to do for the knee?
He's leaving his knee about halfway and sitting back into it. So he's putting a shearing force on his knee capsule. So for me, there's going to be less. What I see is he's not going to get the myotatic reflex hamstrings off the calf. So his squat's going to go up slower, which is going to hold him back long term when I look at how his squat progresses compared to all his overhead lifts and things like that. So he's presenting knee tendonitis and different kind of issues literally every 6 weeks when he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like if you fix it, leave your ego at the door, drop your squat 20 kilos, maybe 30 kilos, everything else will start to go up and it will come up quicker. But it's that constant, I get towards the end of the program, I see myself getting stronger. I want to chase old numbers. I believe I'm at this standard. And it's like, look, the squat is an assistance lift in our sport. It's not a main lift. The main lift is, log, axle, dumbbell, deadlift. We rarely get tested in the squat. And then when we do get tested in the squat, then we can go to parallel, and we can squat more hip dominant. But he's kind of in that point where he's mixing up the two. I'm asking for an Olympic squat. He knows this. And then he gets down to the bottom and he sits back.
Yeah.
Which is the complete opposite angle of the knee I want. I want the knee to obviously point forward. So for him, it's just going to be lack of progress.
Yeah. I think it's, for me, Tom, like for athletes, you definitely want to see that full depth. Like I think Charles was right. And I think so many coaches just glaze over it and think, well, it's kind of deep enough. Like they're definitely past parallel. When the biggest goal if you're training athletes is to keep them on the field. Like if they can keep training, if they can keep playing, like the gym number literally does not matter, relative to, them being there. I mean, and the vertical jump is probably, their speed times are what you want. And the research says the full depth is going to be better for that, so
yeah.
It's massive.
It seems like a no-brainer. I forget that you come from the team sports background, but it's the same thing I say to them, like, especially with team athletes. I've got a 400-meter run. I'm like, this is all fluff. You just need to perform on the track. This is all. Yeah. This is all. We can deload this. I can take this down. And I said to the guy with the knee thing, I'm like, right, we're going to take your deload down another 30%. And he was a bit concerned. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're going to be fine long term. But yeah, that's another thing. Deloads and figuring out what kind of volume they need in the gym. Charles is always famous for saying, I always bring him up, but Charles was famous for saying you only need 2 20-minute sessions to maintain hypertrophy per week for the season.
Yeah.
You don't need a huge amount of work as an athlete.
That's a lot of my sessions were like, there was a little buzz at the start of a few different movements, to get some blood flow, get some buzz in the room. And then we would have like two sort of heavy lifts. We might build to a reasonably heavy set of squats, a reasonably heavy set of like cleans or snatches. And then they'll do like a circuit of assistance work where they just move from one to the next, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And they would be done. Sometimes, guys that have little bits of extras they need to do, but my goal was to just keep them feeling fresh. And oftentimes we could actually still improve their numbers in season because a lot of them hadn't trained those movements very seriously, especially in the 1 to 5 rep range or the 1 to 3 rep range where, I did a lot of work in that rep range, keep them fresh. People think, you can't train 1 to 3 rep range in season. It matters what percentage, like the details matter, right? Like I'm not saying they were doing it at 105% all the time.
Yeah.
You get to that single at 90%, gets that single at 95%. And they actually loved it, recovered from it well, get the high testosterone, keep getting stronger. And then, ultimately like the results were there. Like we won the first year that I worked in the NRL, and then we led the second year, and then we won the regular season, and it's been a dynasty since then. One of my assistants took over, and they won another 2 competitions after that. Patrick Lane, who you might have seen as well, who's also loves Charles's work. It's not obviously a strength coach doesn't win a competition. There's a lot of other factors, players, coaches, and budgets, and lots of things. But all of those players will say they felt significantly different. Their bodies were in a different shape. But I would have them just sit in the bottom of a squat before every field session as well and get into a split squat as part of their, I used to have them for 6 minutes before the field session, like on the field. And we would, within that, there'd be maybe 2 minutes of that, which was in different body positions. And the rest of it would be like skill, sort of running, footwork, that sort of thing. But even just those micro doses of positions, they feel different for the session. They progress over time. Like it doesn't have to be huge volumes of, especially all this dinky kind of mobility stuff that you see going around. Like I'm a huge fan of getting your mobility through your strength. Like that's the range of strength brand that we've built is built on that concept. And that's probably one thing I'd like to touch on with you as well, because I feel like that's the other big piece that Charles was kind of onto, but maybe I think that's a piece that he kind of missed. Like when I was at your place, we're talking about the stretch to win, and then there was the ART, and there's the PIMS, and there was there were a number of different, he valued flexibility. By my mind, he didn't, I don't know why there wasn't just more use of the weights to actually help you get into the positions. That's what I've kind of arrived to. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. So weighted stretching I use. I like it. I think it's easier. I think it's you should be able to go in and squat straight away. Well, not everyone can. And then it's trying to bridge the gap to get them to do that and figuring out the smallest amount of time, the smallest amount of work. I do a little bit of soft tissue work. I think Charles and the way he did his systems, and obviously because I've gleaned a lot from that, is what's the easiest system to use? Hence the pressure points and things like that. I do value ART.
I think it's all valuable. I just in my experience now, in the years since then, I went and did a lot of work with Ido Portal, who was also heavily influenced by Charles, and then, gymnastics training. To be able to do press handstands and things like this, you need to be able to get, way beyond palms on the floor, standing pike, like legs straight, palms to floor, those sorts of things. Like, you have to be able to get to those things, splits with your calves on the ground, etc. But in my experience, it's just strength training. Like, there's literally no difference. To be able to do a back lever on the rings, it's exactly the same as the incline bicep curl. You just have to take the angles further and play with the physics of it. That, I think, is a big part of the magic of what knees over toes, what the knee ability, that athletic truth group system has done, is just to take it that little bit further, which I think, like, athletes, especially sprinters, they need that extra bit of mobility, which Charles believed in, and he did. I know he'd always say, like, I'm functionally lazy with this. I'd take the shortest path, but I don't think it is the shortest path versus actually manipulating the exercise selection, which Charles was a master of, the exercise selection. Manipulate the exercise selection so that you do end up getting to these freakish flexibility feats that are actually normal in martial arts or gymnastics or ballet, or where strength training often, especially for the average gym goer, they're going to lose all sorts of mobility by training like a traditional bodybuilder. Like, so we know that really takes away and makes you more fragile. Takes, if you just train like a powerlifter without any of this philosophy, you're going to become less and less like a child. You're going to become less and less like an athlete, less resilient. Like, the other extreme of that is like using the weights to keep you really, human and balanced, which is the core of what you got, like what you do and what Charles was doing. I just think there's another few degrees of that for the people that need it, which isn't necessarily, it's not the strongman, because keeping some degree of tightness in the suit actually makes sense as well. Like, a powerlifter wears a powerlifting suit for a reason. So like some fascial tightness, stiffness makes sense for these, big, heavy guys who want to lift ridiculous weights. It's only contributing fractions, but it's fractions that make the difference between winning and losing as well, right?
Yeah. At the top end it can, for sure.
I wanted to touch on that with you because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I didn't know how it crosses over with your world.
We've covered mixed in the same way Charles does.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit specifically about pressing, seeing as though that's like,
I love pressing.
Share a little bit of your background. Like, how did you get into, like, how did you fall in love with the press, and what are some of the results you've had there?
It's specifically the log is what I fell in love with, because you have to be good at everything. You need, as we've just been speaking about, you need adequate levels of mobility. You can't lock it out. I see strongmen who, they lean back, they have a quick look at the ref, and they think they've locked it out. You should be able to stand all the way upright. So you need to balance every strength quality, from speed strength to explosive strength to muscular strength, the deadlift, the clean, the press. So it's just, there's something just inherently fun about it, but also challenging in that respect as well. You don't get many people that just can brute strength the world record. Z was close the way he did it, but he was also technically very sound. So I just fell in love with it from that, and then got into it and just wanted to chase down the under 90 world record. That was literally my main goal. I also wanted to be world's strongest man, fell short, just came second, but the world record I did manage to achieve, and it's just fun. I just like that lift specifically. I find it quicker to teach the Olympic weightlifts, or at least quicker to get heavier. Does that make sense? So some people, you get to a point, and in the clean, they don't want it to hit their chest. They don't want to get under the bar in a squat clean. They don't want, so it just gets that little bit more precarious. Whereas the log, it rolls up. You don't have that problem. So yeah, just fell in love with it from the fact that I had to compete in it.
Have you used it much with rugby players, and do you use it a lot with your clients? And you find it
every single person who comes in my gym must be on the log.
And you find it easier to teach than like clean and jerk or cool. Yeah. So would you do that if you went and worked with one of the if you went and worked with the Lions or the British Lions, would you have them all log clean and pressing?
Most probably. You'd have to do obviously the assessments, but I'd assume it would help their shoulders a little bit more. I'd assume I'd assume most of them would be able to catch a log in a clean with a log easier than a barbell. I'd assume some of those props and forwards can't do that. That's an assumption, obviously, and obviously we should be able to fix it, but why bother if you can just use the log? Obviously, the forward displacement of the log puts a lot more through the trunk. I don't like using core, but it affects your trunk and your upper back strength a little bit more. So it's my go-to because it's a lot easier. And then if you look at the neutral factor on the press, I think that would be better for most people as well. The only drawback is it's a partial lift, because obviously the log has a diameter that sits away from you. So the handles are like that. They're not directly on the chest, but I use the Swiss bar to combat that. Again, we're talking about mobility. I want to be strong through a full range, and I want to make sure I can press from the chest as well as from a partial range. Yeah,
the partial pressing is also super valuable, right? Like, as long as it's not the only work that you're doing. So there's so many questions I want to ask you. What was your world record there?
So I managed to achieve 166 kilos at a body weight of under 90 kilos.
Yeah. Were you right on the border with your body weight then? Or I know for a while you were like
24-hour
fighting to get up there.
I did a 24-hour drop. So you get a 24-hour weigh-in with some of the record attempts. Believe it or not, on Monday, I was 97 kilos. On Saturday morning, I was under the weight. It was one of the worst weight cuts I've done, but it's the only time I've used an IV. An IV makes a whole difference, whole world of difference. Every other time I've rehydrated through obviously intake. An IV within an hour, well, the IV went into me within half an hour. I felt superhuman at that point. Normally, I'm dead until the evening, and then all of a sudden I start waking up. But the IV makes, especially with that kind of weight cut. Now, I've done that a lot of times, and I always do it as a step. So my first ever competitions, I would weigh in with all my clothes on and my shoes on, and I'd be under 90. And then I'd get a little bit heavier throughout the years, and I'd go from 92, 93, 94. So I didn't just go and start at 97, which is another mistake I see some people do.
Yeah. Did you do the like hot bath and sheets or sauna and that sort of stuff to strip fluid out?
Sauna was what I wanted to do. Again, I wanted to risk it a little bit. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to bed heavier. So I went to bed and I think I was 92 kilos. And normally overnight, at that point, I'm going to get, because I'd stopped drinking in that morning. So I'd already stopped drinking for at least 12 hours. So another 12 hours of no fluid and sleeping, I would have been another kilo lighter in the morning, and it wasn't as much as we thought. So I had to sweat out a lot more in the sauna the next day. And then sometimes you can look at, and again, it's, this performance isn't necessarily healthy, but sometimes you can look at certain diuretics as well. Yeah.
I mean, world records are world records for a reason. If it's not the same as mum and dad training for longevity.
No, it's completely different.
No one's ever done.
I said this to some clients at the last one because I had to do a teeny tiny weight drop for my competition just in November, and they were like, "Oh, you look like." I'm like, "Look, there's nothing about performance that's healthy. Okay, you guys train completely differently. There's nothing about what I'm doing that's necessarily healthy. I'm not being stupid, but this is not something I'm going to do week in, week out."
How do you feel in the big body now compared to when you were, at that 88 kilos trying to?
It took a while. So I went as soon as I hit the world record at 90, I was like, boom, I'm done. I'm going up. Okay. I'm not doing this weight cut ever again. So I went to 105, and that same year I managed to break the British record twice. So I've done 177.2 kilos at 105 kilos. And it took a while. I noticed when I was cleaning it, blood pressure would be up. And I wasn't fat necessarily. It wasn't anything to do with poor nutrition. It was just getting used to walking around. I could feel my, you could feel walking up the stairs. You could feel your energy system working. You're just like, this is not normal. Now I'm at 105, walking around pretty comfortably, pretty healthy, jumping around, running about, absolutely fine.
Yep.
But it did. That's one thing, because I've never done it, and I've never had many athletes go that big or change weight categories that much. So that's one thing that I will obviously, take as an experience and go, look, you need to look at it and go, it's going to take a year of normalizing at that body weight.
Yeah. Do you prefer now being that 105 than, be like where you were at the 88 or 90 or whatever? You're shredded, it's a different kind of different style of physique.
I'm for sure a bit softer. I prefer being leaner, but I'm comfortable now. I think it was a good thing, because my body image, I was always a little bit obsessed with body image as well. So it was difficult to put on body fat. So for me to normalize and be okay with things like that was actually good for me. Now that sounds weird. I don't know if you've had that with clients, but for me to understand, a better relationship with body image and food and things like that, that was actually quite important. But I definitely prefer being leaner. But my balance at the moment is I'll get leaner, and I was like, oh, fuck, I need to get stronger. And I've still got that world record to hit. So I'm still like, look, just hit the world record, and then I can spend the next 50 years getting leaner.
So what is the number there that you're zeroed in on?
The world record for the 105 is 186. So I need 187 or more. The last comp, I had a lot of elbow tendonitis issues stemming from a change in clean technique, and it just got unbearable. You know what it's like when you feel okay, and then you warm up, and then it's like that numb pain for like half an hour, maybe more, and then it turned into like a whole day. So I hit gym PBs leading up to it, but I wasn't able, and I opened on a good lift, but I wasn't able to present it on the day. Another thing happened on that day, and I think that was meant to happen rather than me break a record. So, is what it is. Yeah.
When do you think you might go around again for that?
Whenever the gym's open. So I've got another 4. If I have 4 to 8 weeks of good prep, it'll be, be good to see where I'm at. There are comps that have been put up. I think we're looking at, most realistic is, prepare for June, July, because, people like me can go into a gym that's my own, and other people are at home and they've got no access. So I think they'll probably wait a little bit longer. So we're looking at the second half of the year.
Yeah. And how's the tendon? How's the tricep now?
So it was it wasn't triceps. It was brachioradialis mainly. It's weak. I was doing some hammer curls on a 40-degree incline, and I could feel it was weak still. There's no pain. I haven't gone into cleaning the log yet. I'm still this is the second week of being back on push press on the log out of the rack. But I'll go back to clean soon and see how it feels on that. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And what about with the people that you're working with? So you're working with a bunch of super high level strongmen now. Is that the focus and what's most exciting as a coach at the moment, or
I get excited about anyone that makes results, and I love case studies where people don't think they've got any more left. Like last person to come to. I like challenges. I do love the strength athletes, but I get as much gratification out of training Hicksy is literally that far off the world record, just a small mistake, as the guys when they come back to my local gym and seeing them progress day to day. My goal is actually to get more strength athletes in my gym, and to take them through the next levels, and be, over the next year, take it from athlete to coach, as we spoke about right at the beginning of this podcast.
Yep. What do you think you might achieve as a coach? Like, if we look at the next 5-10 years, like what would be like, if you
the crazy goal I've got is I want to have half of the finalists at World's Strongest Man. And I haven't thought about powerlifting or weightlifting. I'd love to help more. I have a weightlifter called Tadas who is incredible. We've done some great stuff with him, from battered, can't move, to going to a 170 clean and jerk at 95 kilos. So he's an incredibly strong guy. I'd love to have more powerlifters. Obviously, I'm not known in powerlifting. I have some on the books, I'm known for strength, and I can get anyone strong, whether it's athletic performance or strongman. But obviously, there's that goal in strongman of having 5 out of 10, so half of the world's strongest man finalists. That'd be a cool goal. Whether it's out of my gym or whether it's I train them from a distance and consult them. That would be nice. It's fun.
How many have you worked with so far?
I've taken Matthias Belsack to the final and Hixie to the final. They never got to the final before they started working with me, so I'm proud of that achievement. Aaron Page wouldn't have got to the final, but he got invited last year, and he was a guy who was in my gym, and then he recently he left a couple of years ago, so I'm proud of what he did. Who else we got? Chris Morgan, I've got to UK's final. That was quite a big achievement. That was the first time he's done that. But as of worlds, it's just the 2 guys. Another guy I've helped, Mikael Licht. He's a Danish guy I've consulted, and he wasn't competing last 2 years, but he's a 6-time Denmark's strongest man. He's another guy that has the possibility to do good things.
What would you change for the powerlifters? Like, how different would your, how you're training them be?
I think one of the things I definitely intersperse into powerlifting, whenever they come to me, it's usually new techniques for them. And I like to use the analogy of neurology, and it's advanced techniques, as you or maybe somebody else might call them, like isometrics, eccentrics, and things like that. And it's a case of, I like to use things like maximal isometrics and maximal eccentrics, so they can activate higher threshold motor units than they're normally used to, and then it translates into neurological improvements in performance over the long term. So often the thing with powerlifters is they don't use those kind of things. They don't use that kind of thinking. I see Josh Bryant use it a lot, but not many other coaches.
Josh Bryant has some awesome content, training some super strong guys.
Yeah, Julius Maddox, the bench presser. Wow.
Yeah. Who is he? One of the guys that you will kind of keep an eye on? Like, who are the guys that you sort of keep an eye on what they're up to?
Josh Bryant, for sure. I think he's really good. Who else do I look at for strength? Louis I look at a lot. I read a lot of his stuff. Tell you what, I'm going back through the older strength texts. I like going back through the Poliquin principles. Just the manual, not the book, the actual manuals, because and the science of practice of strength training, super training. I've actually never read. Charles put me off reading super training, believe it or not. He was like, "Don't read it; it's too much maths. You need to be a mathematic genius before reading it. You've just paused, but I'm going to keep going." So I'm going back through those books and just trying to. I think once you go through 5 years without reading it, and then you read it again, something small might just go, "What? That'll click more." But as for people online, I don't have a huge amount of people I go to and I get excited about their content, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'd rather read books.
Yeah. Cool.
What about you?
Well, at the moment, I mean, I think the big innovation, the big thinking point for me has been around the manipulation of the strength curve and thinking about really concentric dominant exercises and the therapeutic role of strongman exercises and those sorts of things, and taking it to the outer range. So it's kind of like applying what Ben has like a hierarchy of movements for the knee. It's basically like quad tendon, quad, a series that is working very well. Like he's getting a lot of people saying, "I've done everything, and then this, now I can cancel my surgery, or now X, Y, Z's happened." I think that same therapy is going to work for a lot of other joints across the body. So like that's really been what I've been thinking most about. I wish I had a lot more time, for a lot more research, to publish all the kind of ideas that I, have, things that are messing around in my brain. But that's probably been the biggest focus for me is like, so thinking about how that fits together. I'm not sure if there's any like strength coach at the moment that's really rocking my world. I always like, seeing what you're up to. I think your videos, like you had so much value in the content. Like I think you're probably the most underrated guy on Instagram in strength. Like you don't get the views and the likes that you should get for whatever factors go into that. But yeah, you've got some really valuable stuff there. I think Wolfgang's posts are like also, the massive bang for your buck posts. I know he's not a huge fan of social media and the distractions of it and whatnot, but like the value that's in his content is phenomenal. Like he goes straight to the point. But yeah, it's I've just been getting back to my own training. We moved around so much, and then now we live. I don't even have any bars or anything. There's literally no gym on this island that I live on. So I've been getting back into my dips and chins as a huge focus, and building the weight on my weighted dips and chins. And there's always something to be excited about. I think that's the main thing. Everybody needs to have movements that they're, like if you're excited about your training and there's an experiment that you're running, I think life is so much better than when you don't have that. I didn't have it for a few months recently, and it was a little bit like what you're talking about with the body composition. Like usually if I'm not training well, I'm depressed. Like if I feel like I'm going backwards in terms of strength, performance, body composition, like I get depressed and feel down on myself. Where I didn't have that recently, which was like a good breakthrough for me of like I don't have to attach my self-worth to what's going on in the gym. In saying that, it's been epic to like be getting improvements again, session on session, recovering and testing ideas. And I just think anyone who's not having that experience is kind of missing out on one of the real joys of life. Like it's really not I don't have to discipline myself to do it. Like I love it. Like another lesson from Charles, like you do what you love most, but it's not being able to train is such a that's a lot worse than actually having to discipline yourself to kind of like force yourself into it versus like actually looking forward to the session.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more.
Have you had any time off like in the last decades? Like do you train every week kind of thing? And
the times I have off are immediately after competition. I use the same rule I use with my athletes. I'm like, you need a week off. And again, it's like Charles said, ideally I'd send them to the opposite climate or have them do the opposite thing. I'm like, look, go for a swim, go for walking, play table tennis, do the opposite, do a yin activity, go to yoga. So I do that. I had a slightly longer period off after the last comp for, you got COVID reasons, but it was mainly the elbow. So I just had to dance around that a little bit. But no, I'm always in the gym. I've always got, as you say, it's the experiment that I like. Yeah. I'm not just trying the same things. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. I want to try different things. I want to use myself as a guinea pig and not my clients before them. So you know what? That's the experiment and enjoying that aspect is, it's never ending for me.
Love it. I think that's a good note to end on, Tom. We do it for the love and the joy of the journey and seeing others triumph as well. And that's, I think, one of the great things. You put all that effort and time into strategy and science, and then you have this other side of it that's like the emotion and the satisfaction, the connections, the people that you meet. Like all that human side of training is so valuable as well. I really appreciate all the work that you do and everything that you've shared today. Look forward to checking out the app. Anyone who's not like checking out Tom's stuff, his website has ridiculous amounts of value on there, and Instagram as well. Social media can be a waste of time, but if you're looking at the right people, then it can be a gold mine, where you're literally discovering decades worth of knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me and your kind words. I really appreciate it, Kim. And we will do this again sometime.
Yeah, hopefully I can cruise across the border. We're not far away from each other now. So
no, man, you're literally a stone's throw. You've got to come see the place. It's massively different. It'd be great to have you.
Yeah, it was literally like they told us we couldn't leave the hotel and all that jazz when we buzzed through last time. But yeah, it's going to happen. So thanks for your time. Look forward to chatting again soon.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, Tom.